Welcome everybody to the talk about how Google does test automation. Today we have this amazing talker. Here is Omar Jurado, who has over 6 years of experience in test automation. Please pay attention to this talk because the things he is going to teach you today, you definitely cannot Google them. I remind you that we have a chat where you can post your questions and this talk will be recorded and the link will be provided later. Thank you so much. Omar, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good night to all of you. So today we're gonna talk about how Google does test automation, or basically what have I done so far. So as Tanya said, I'm a senior test automation engineer. I have been working on automating tests for the last 6 years, I guess, on banking industry and travel industry, retail, and now for Google. So the last 3 years, what I have done so far has been, well, I will talk about this, about how, what a software developer in test does over there. I will talk about the test infrastructure and strategies. I will give some implementation ideas and also we'll discuss about how we execute the test. And finally, we can go to a question session. So what is this about? My description of the talk may be not too descriptive, but we will not talk about technologies or tools that are owned by Google. So it will not make any sense if I give you the names because some of them you may Google them and you will not find anything about it. But what we are gonna do is talk about some programming languages that they use over there and are not owned by them. We will talk about some strategies and approaches that they use or we use over there. And finally, some of these strategies may be new to you, so it will be good if you consider to use them in your next projects or recommend them to your companies, your industries, or your teams. So, what a software developer in test does over there? Maybe this could be surprising, but we program automated tests. And so for some other stuff like write test plans, test cases, report bugs, you know, you may be familiarized with all this kind of tasks, right? But what else we do over there? We not only are limited to create the automated test program. I mean, writing with Java, Selenium, any language you prefer. We are not only limited to do that. We also have to sometimes create the whole environment with where the test will run. We also have to set up the continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline, and also take care of some security policies and that will allow us to run our jobs and our tests. So let's talk about the first approach that we use for creating an automated test. And this is the most popular approach, I will say, at least and far on my experience, this is like the approach where everywhere is used. So this one is like we have our test client, which in this case will be our robot hero that represents Java, represents Selenium APIs, represents Protractor, any languages that you may like to control a web browser and any API to control a web browser or any programming language that you will like. And it will connect to an application, the front-end server. And the front-end server, it's connecting to a data backend, it's connecting to a lot of external services and maybe some other backends. So this is the easiest way to create an automated test, right? So we create our test and connect to the application in an already existing environment. So for non-production environment, I will say that our environments like QA environment, staging environment, and that's what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about non-production environments and testing on a non-production environment. So create our client and test in an already existing environment. So some interesting points that happens with this kind of test in Google as a curious information. In order to create a test and execute a test, we have to create a test account. So we do not connect to the application's user using login and user and password anymore. We have an API that generates a session and a cookie for the test account, and we then feed that cookie to the Selenium web driver in order to access the application. So we forget about using and password. The only way an automated test can connect to an application is through the test account. So you cannot make your automated test and connect to the application with your user and password because there are several, maybe all of the authentication are two steps. So there is a step when we have to touch a physical key, so it's not possible to do this. That is why we have to use the test account in order to connect to an application. And some internal application does not allow test accounts. So this is kind of tricky and strange because if we want to create a automated test and test an internal application, we cannot use the test accounts. So we have to do some other workaround sometimes, or even it's not possible to do automated tests for internal applications. So what are the advantages of testing in a not production environment? Well, the advantages that I can see right now, it's we can focus on writing the actual test. But what are the disadvantages of testing in an already existing non-production environment? One of the main problems is that your test relied on third-party systems. This means that the test can be flackier or non-deterministic. So making another of the problems is that you will have a lot of challenges at least in Google do authentication. The problem of the test that could be flaky is that it makes your test non-deterministic. What does this mean? We can look at it as a randomness. We will not be sure every time a test fails. We will not be sure if it's failing because the actual application under test is failing, or it's failing because a network problem. It's failing because some of the services is down. There are a lot of considerations that could make your test to fail. So that's one of the main problems, and that's what we call make your test non-deterministic. And this is a problem. So what other strategies do we have? So let's talk about again about how an application looks, right? So every time we use an application, we connect to the application through the front-end server, and the front-end server again connects to its data backend and a lot of services. So what other options we have? Okay, so one of the main approaches that it's used over here at Google, it's using an hermetic environment. And this means in concept that it's an application that it's isolated from any other external source as external services, as RPCs, as any connection, any network connection. It's not possible. So your hermetic environment, it's an application that can work as expected without any connection to the network or any external service. So if you do this, you will have your test client, your front-end server, your data backend, and all the sessions services or another backends living in the same machine. So this is an hermetic environment. And how can we create an hermetic environment? Well, we'll have to deploy your own backend. You will have to deploy your own front-end server. You will have to create your database and populate the data, and also create a lot of fake services, mocks, stubs of any external service or response that your application may require. And as you can see, yes, it is actually a lot of work. And I guess you'll be wondering why, right? Why do we have, or why it could be convenient to spend a lot of time doing the environment? Well, let me talk you about the advantages of doing an hermetic environment. So the first one is that our test does not rely on third-party systems. So as everything is living in the same machine, you are avoiding the non-deterministic factor, at least in theory. You are getting rid of network connection problems. You are getting rid of waiting to a service to not be down. You get rid of all of that. So that's one of the main advantages. Also, another of the advantages is that the testers get involved with the actual implementation of the application. Why? Because when you are developing an hermetic environment, you will have to know the applications in a deeper level. So you will have to get into the code, you will have to know how it's working, you will have to understand everything about the application in order to fake them or fake all the services it requires. So this leads to the tester gets better identifying the root cause of some bugs. So as you already get involved into the code and understand how the applications work, if there is something that it's failing, that the tester will be better identifying what is causing the real problem. This has another consequence. Well, if you already know what's the problem, you also may have to fix it, or you will be able to fix it. At least here in Google, if you identify a problem, you're allowed to change the application. You can do your fix, you can send your change, and somewhere else of the team will review it. And if it fixes the application, it's no problem on fixing it. You don't have to always wait to the developer to fix a specific problem. So those are some of the advantages of creating an hermetic environment. The tester gets more involved with the actual implementation, and that leads you into a better understanding of the application itself, and you can help some other ways that we regularly not are not used to do. But as you know, not everything can be great. So about the disadvantages, as I said before, uh, it's very time consuming. And by this, I mean it can take months, sometimes, not only weeks, months, because yeah, it's a lot of work creating a program that will deploy everything. We have tools already that help us to create a hermetic environment, but they don't always fit to our needs. So sometimes we have to create our own programs that will help us to do this. Uh, it may require some assistance from the developers to create the hermetic environment. This is because you not always understand the application, and sometimes you will need to get some help from the developers, but they also may be busy. But this means that it is not only time consuming for you, but it is also time consuming for the rest of the team, or at least for the developers. You will need assistance from them sometimes. Another of the problems is that if an external service changes, I mean the real external service, you also may need to update your fake implementation of that service. So yeah, the main consideration you will have to keep in mind for this type of approach of using an hermetic environment is that the time. You will need a lot of time to do it, and your clients will be have to be aware of this, that it takes a lot of time. It even takes more time creating the hermetic environment itself than doing the test, the actual test. Actually, the creating the test is the easy part. And how we achieve this, I mean, in the implementation. Well, as I said, we already have tools that help us to create our hermetic environment. It creates, generates code, generates build files, help us with a general setup. But what happens if we don't have this kind of tools? Well, you always have the option to do your own program that does this. And it will fit better to your specific needs. So we, even if we have the tools, we don't always uh, uh, choose them. We do actually create our own programs to deploy the hermetic environment, because also when you generate code with some tools, sometimes there are generated tools that you don't use. So we can call this as trash code, right? That's the bad part of using tools that generate code. So one of the better approaches is to create your own program to deploy the vertical environment. Some implementations ideas. At least I am a Java guy, and the applications that I am working on are Java-based backends. So I also write the test on Java. But remember, you are not limited to any language. You can use any language you like and any API you like as, as Protractor that also allows you to control a web browser, not only Selenium. And for the test part with Java, you can use JUnit, TestNG, anything you like. But the general idea is this. You will have to create your tests. I guess that's pretty straightforward. You will have, or it will be useful if you create a base test, and in here, your base test, you will have an option to create a rule, a JUnit rule. So with the rule, you can create some specific actions or rules that can execute before your whole test suite. So what does your new rule need to have? Well, remember everything you have to implement on your Hermetic environment. You will have to create some classes that will deploy your database and also will have to populate your database with test data. Your rule also will have to start your front-end server, your back-end server in case, and you will have to create all the providers you need in this rule. Um, and this is the most important part, and what you have to keep in mind is that if you are going to use an hermetic environment, you will have to modify your application, the application itself. So just you will have to find a way to tell to the application that if you are testing or you are executing the application on a test environment, then you will have to use the fake service instead of the real service. But yes, one of the main considerations you have to keep in mind is that if you want to use an hermetic environment, you will have to change your application. And this is okay. Maybe we are not used to change the application, but it's something that you will have to consider to do because it will help you not only to understand the application, but also it can help you in your work because over here, if we are working with some, I don't know, text fields or some framework that doesn't make easy create your own selectors, you can modify the application and put IDs, put names, put anything you want in order to help you in your work. So don't be afraid of modifying an application. And finally, to be clear on this, the considerations. What do we generally bug? Well, if you choose to go for the hermetic environment, you will have to create your own users for the application. You will have to mock external services. You will have to mock sessions. You will have to create your own database. Maybe not the schema itself, but the database. Actually, not the schema. You will use the one provided already and populate the database. You will have to create your own data providers if needed and your own third-party responses as JSON or XMLs. So this is how you will look like after finishing the hermetic environment. And how do we execute the test? Well, this is just information for curiosity because this really depends on the infrastructure of your clients. But we have, as always, the local way to execute a test. You will have your machine, you will have your test, and you will execute it over the operating system. You only have to create your test client, which could be, again, Java, Selenium, maybe, Protractor, Python, any language you like, and it will connect to the application. Um, some considerations that you will need to have over here is that if you want to work with an hermetic environment, you will have to have a workstation with a lot of resources. If, for instance, in my case, I work with a workstation with 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it had happens sometimes that even my computer get froze. So it could be sometimes because some jobs didn't finish correctly or stuff like that. But yes, you will have to keep in mind that you will need a lot of resources in your computer in order to create and execute an hermetic environment in a local machine. And you will maybe, if you're working with Java at least, you will need to change some of your Java heap memory. So keep that in mind if you want to work with hermetic environments. What other ways we have to execute a job? Well, we have, let's call it default job, which is basically sending your test to a job. That job will use a master that will manage the test itself. And in this case, our test client represents the whole embedded environment along with the test. So in the job, it will deploy your hermetic environment and execute the test all isolated. So this default job will will not connect to the network, will not allow your application to connect to the network. That's why for some internal applications, we have to create or use this hermetic environment because anyway, we cannot connect even through a test account. So in this kind of jobs, they are already isolated and will have your application and deploy everything there along with your test. So this default job already exists by default in the continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline. You don't have to do anything. You just have to create your change with your test, and the job will be already there. And it will execute your test when it's reviewing your change. So this is the default way we do it. Some of disadvantages of using this default job, besides the network limitation or the isolation, it's that it has some time limits. So those are some of the restrictions, but we have some other jobs that allow distributed processing. And these kind of jobs, well, they execute on hundreds or even thousands of machines. They do allow you to connect to the network, but for using this kind of job, you have to do some security setups. So you have to send through changes some um, modifications to the security policies, and someone else will review it and will tell if your test can or not or cannot connect to the services that you are requesting. In order to do these jobs, also you will have to request some quota. All of the teams have quota assigned to them, so you cannot use this as free as you want. You have to you be careful on how much you use these jobs. But yes, they exist. They allow you to run on parallel your tests on distributed machines, and they allow you to connect to the network. So this ones works for the instance where you want to test in a already existing non-production environment. So you can create just your test client and connect to the actual application on staging or QA, and this will allow you to do this. So, as conclusions, yes, doing a hermetic environment got a lot of benefits that deserves the effort of creating them. However, you will have to keep in mind that the communication and interaction with the team is a crucial factor. Uh, uh, with this, I mean that remember, you will have to Have a good communication and interaction with the development team because you will need some of their assistance sometimes in order to create the hermetic environment. So communication is a crucial factor to do this. Doing tests in already existing environments as QA or staging, it's a problem. Why? Because of the rely on external systems, and this makes your test non-deterministic. As I said before, this is not good because having a test non-deterministic doesn't ensure you what's failing, what's the problem. If your server on the test, you cannot be sure if it's a problem on the application that you are testing or it's an external factor. So getting rid of the not deterministic factor is crucial. And yeah, if your test fail, if your test fail when you are using an hermetic environment, you can be sure that the problem it's your application. You don't have to look anywhere else. You already getting rid at least of that non-deterministic factor. So yeah, remember, hermetic environment, it's a great approach. It's one of the approaches most used here, but the communication will be a factor and will be very important in order to deliver your test quicker because this takes a lot of time. And well, that's it from my part. We can go to the question sessions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Omar, for this interesting talk. And yeah, we have a few questions from our audience. So let's see. There is one here that says, this is an anonymous questions question. It says, from my point of view, it's not always advantage that testers are fixing issues because it will prevent the point of view they are looking on the specific requirement. What are the reasons you have such process? What will be the benefits of them?
Well, it's not like we solve all the issues as a maintenance team. It's most like if you find something that it's real quick to fix, you can do it right away, and this will help to the process itself because you don't have to raise a bug or you don't have to wait for the developing team to deliver you the change. You already identified the problem. It could be a fix, a quick fix, and you just do it. It's not like it's not like taking the role of a maintenance team. We don't fix like that big of an issue. We just if we can, if there is something that you can fix right away, you just do it. But yes, we're not substituting any other role as tester, as manual tester or maintenance team. We just deliver something that we can do very quick, and that's it. Our main focus always will be create an automated test for preventing bugs to get introduced to the application. But some of the advantages is that you can help to fix some minor issues, and this will help the whole process because it's some time saving for everyone in the team. But yes, this is not like substituting roles itself. We are not substituting manual testing or maintenance team's role. No, just minor fixes that can be fixed real quick.
Thank you so much. We have another question from Alejandro Perez, and he's asking, do you use any tool to automate the creation of infrastructure for hermetic environment?
Yes, I do, but they are Google tools, so I don't think you can find them on the web. But don't be afraid of this because actually the most part of my projects has been done not through these existing tools. What I do, it's a Java program that will help me to deploy the servers that I need, the databases that I need. And for the fake services that I will need, also I use Java. I use the real interfaces of the services, but with a fake implementation. That's it. Most of the times I do my own program with Java. I don't use the tools itself. But yes, I have tools, but they are Google owned tools. So yeah, I'm afraid I cannot share you the name because maybe you will not even find them in the web.
Thank you so much. The next question is very voted by the uh, audience. In an anonymous person is asking how to pass interview for Google QA position.
Okay, fast interview. Well, I actually do some interviews, and one of the things that it's most important, at least for this position, it's that they like to program, to be programming, because most of your times it will be spent programming. So a fast interview, it's very likely to be as a developer interview, but you will add some additional questions about testing if they know some testing frameworks as keyword-driven test, as some other testing frameworks or developing frameworks as test-driven development. We introduce some additional questions regarding test automation as Selenium 2. But yes, your main focus on the interview will have to be related with the development skills because most of your time you will have to be developing and you will have to like it, or at least the candidate will have to like what he's doing. So at least for my approach, I focus on evaluate the developing skills because most of your time you will spending developing, maybe 90% of your time.
Wow, thank you for these interesting tips. And we have another question from Max. He's asking when a bug gets fixed by a tester, you mentioned such a possibility. Is there always another tester to verify the fix?
And it could be, but it does not always have to be a tester. I mean, everyone in the team can verify it. If, some developer or some business person of the application, it can verify. But my, the person who verifies this, it has to be an internal person of Google. In my case, but yeah, it's not limited to a tester. Could be, but not limited to.
Thank you so much. We have another question from Branco. How you will catch the problems which are coming from the third parties when they try to change and you are not having problems here. Okay, and you are not informed if you use Hermetic environment. Do you need me to read it again?
And no, I guess I understand.
Okay.
Well, as I am using the real implementation of a service, as I am using them, in my case, I work with Java-based applications. Sometimes when we have to do G4, I mean, we have to sync our application with the base code, right? And every time you sync, you will find the changes on your application. So if something changed, you will find it when you are updating your code base of your application. And that's where your fake service will start failing because you will do an update or every time someone will change code and submit it, it will update the base code and it will start failing. That's how you notice that something went change. Just updating your code base of your application.
Thank you so much. We have another anonymous question. Are you doing unit tests or it's developers' responsibility?
No, it's developers for responsibility. Yes, I don't do unit tests for our integration test.
Very good. Another anonymous question says, how do you simulate different usage patterns with the use web applications for different user groups?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it, please?
Sure. How do we simulate different usage patterns with the same web application for different user groups?
Okay, I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but if sorry, if you mean um, like different. Ah, okay, okay. So some of the applications have roles on each user, right? Tags. You will, in our case, when we create the users for the Hermetic environment, we also can set up these properties. If you have administrators, if you have only readers, or I don't know, any role name you want, we can also set up this. But you will also have to work in a module that will create your users for your Hermetic environment. But yes, it's possible. But as I said you before, you may have require some assistance from the developer team.
Thank you so much. Very good. Another anonymous question says, do you use Puppeteer? If yes, what are the pros and cons?
No, I'm afraid I don't use it. No, no, I don't know what it is. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't think we have more questions from the audience. I will give one more minute in case you guys want to ask something else. I gotta say, these are very interesting questions. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I remember you can continue posting your questions in the link of this talk. Thank you so much for your assistance, for your questions, and thank you so much, Omar, for this interesting talk.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your assistance.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice day.